please him. She repeated it again and again, as if lamenting her failure in her mission. You love him, that's why you did all of it. He's not just your master, Simran. Nor did he's my soulmate. Urvashi could hear Durupti's voice coming at that statement. Who is he? Please tell me if I do. Urvashi saw Simran turning, her teeth tinged with blood, as she giggled manically. All we did, all that we have planned will be worthless. She paused for a moment before murmuring in resignation, you cannot change your fate. And then Simran pushed herself frantically inside the furnace, her head burning in the boiling fire. As Durupti stepped back in horror, Urvashi couldn't bear the sight, and they hugged each other as they saw Simran's flesh dissolving, her bare broken bones visible to her two enemies. Urvashi led Durupti outside, wondering about the information she had received from Simran and how much Durupti knew about it. The scarred man, the eye of Brahma. This was information beyond the ordinary. As they left the underground cells, they realized they were in the middle of a half-empty street. The dawn was almost near, and the skies had a scarlet thread cutting right across the overcast clouds. Wind was sharp, and the sound of sudden footsteps of the civilians irritated Urvashi, who would have thought two princesses fighting witches and traveling without their entourage behind them. Urvashi grinned to herself, we don't need men or soldiers to handle us. Durupti winked at her, you know I shouldn't ask you about what happened down there. Don't. Durupti shook her head, it has turned out to be a deeper mess than I had imagined, and I don't want to get into it. I pity her. You know she never received what she longed for. I don't want you to get into this mess, Urvashi. I don't want to lose my friend. She smiled at Urvashi, because I intend to be in her company for a long time. You can have my company if you don't piss me off. They both laughed as the city in front of them gleamed brilliantly. They walked forward, hiding their faces so that no one would recognize them, until Urvashi realized that all the people were running in the same direction. She narrowed her eyes, and instead of going back to her fort, she made way to the crowd that had assembled with Durupti on her side. Was there any carnival today? I presume not, Durupti responded. They walked in the midst of the crowd, holding each other's hands, and followed the people to see what was happening. Wooden barricades had been put in front, while guards stood over the pedestal where announcements were made. And then Urvashi saw Lord Kali. Lord was sitting at the back with a bored expression, and she saw someone else, her father. He wasn't standing, rather he was kneeling on the ground, his hands bound, his entire front naked. Urvashi could see dark maligning scars that ran across his back. His hair was greasy and his beard bloody. No, this is not happening. Urvashi glanced at Durupti, and she began to move to protect him, but Durupti grabbed her hand. She calmly whispered, don't. If you go as well, Kali will kill you. The crimes of the betrayers shall be answered in face of the public. Lord Vedanta, the former king of Indragarh, went against the crown, and for those who go against the crown, they shall be met with one fate. Lord Kali, in his shining golden robe, unsheathed his sword and laid it close to Vedanta's neck. Lord Vedanta rebelled against me and killed an officer of the court, General Pradma from the Rakshas regiment. Met a harsh end. In most cases, an executor would be doing what I'm doing right now, but I choose to do it myself, since the king himself must pass the sentence and execute it. Urvashi was stunned, frozen. Please don't. Do you apologize? Kali asked Vedanta as the public booed in unison. Apologize, and I shall let you live. May Lord Indra's Vajra. His sentence was cut off as Lord Kali sliced his head, beheading it from his body. The head popped and dropped from the pedestal, hidden behind the guards who covered the pedestal. Blood sprayed from the body as it motionlessly fell over to the side. No, Urvashi almost fainted. We are leaving, said Durupti through her gritted teeth. She looked at Urvashi with concern. He will come after you. Now you need to be safe. Urvashi was motionless, her hands drooped down away from Durupti's palms in pain, anger, betrayal. Padma prepared herself for the duel. She hated the fact that she had to duel someone she didn't know. Mostly she killed people based on contracts, not out of personal vendetta. Vedanta's soldiers had to die because they had killed her brothers, and she will do her utmost to defend herself from anyone who was a threat to her. There was a reason behind the kill. Always in this situation, she was being forced to commit the same act under the command of a creature. Brahmputraksh was not human. He was a deranged creature who willfully spoke Padma's language, but was also very primitive in his style of walking, with half-bent and slouched shoulders. His skin was dark, just like the Rakshas, and he had red lips smeared wide over his face, probably cherry or worse blood. Padma was in her own hut with Kalki and Kripa on her side, while Anna was on the other end of the hut with Ratna, Maru and Smrit. They were whispering, and their language was what caught Padma's attention. They were not Manavs. They were Apsaras, but they don't look like their kind. A sense of relief washed over her, since Apsaras were easy to kill. Hell, they weren't even the warrior kind. They were seductresses, often employed at brothels to please the rich merchants and kings they couldn't fight. Nowhere in history had there ever been a record of an Apsara fighting in a battle. They were always kept in the inner quarters to please the men, or in some instances women. Putraksh let them choose their weapons, and Padma asked for her two daggers that had been taken by Daruda Singha back in the cave. When rummaging through the rucksack of Daruda, they had found those daggers, saffron hilted with a crazy studded with a gleaming gem. She swung them in the air, practicing for the fight. Anything else I should know about these beings? She asked. Kripa shrugged. Only that if you die last they'll eat you. Padma rolled her eyes at the thought of her body being ripped by a dozen pishach. I don't understand why they make people duel. Why don't they easily consume them? I wish I knew. Perhaps it's a fun sport for them to eat the weaker kind and reward the stronger one with the spoils of the battle, and to live another day. You see those skulls that Brahmaputraksh wore? Padma nodded. So did Kalki. Padma gave him a contemptuous look. The so-called Xavier. But he couldn't proclaim it now, not especially when someone else was fighting the battles. These skulls signify the people he has killed to come to this position. They believe the strongest shall rule them, and if not they will be eaten, for they are good for nothing but food. That's why there aren't a lot of pishach out here in the world. They keep eating each other. Kind of poetic, eh? He giggled nervously. Why did you nudge me back then when you heard his name? Padma was in no mood to joke. She never joked now that she thought about it. Sadal, she couldn't even remember the last time she had smiled. Not the snarky sarcastic smile she had for Kalki's stupidity, but genuine laughter. Oh, it has been ages, because Brahmaputraksh is someone I have heard of. Back when I was trying to stop the spread of Soma, and I was down there at Suparnika disguised as a traveler to burn down their Somalta plants, I had heard rumors about Brahmaputraksh. He was a family had been burnt down by the Nagas during one of their teensy battles. He frowned at the thought and he went mad. Killed a bunch of Supans for not doing their duty. Since the Supans were quite the majestic kind, they exiled him. I suppose he ended up here. You should have seen how he killed the men. Guts out, lungs eaten up, faces scarred. Kalki shook his head. That's enough, old man. All right, did you burn the Somalta plants? Some of them. The Supans won't let them out of their sight. Kalki intervened. I don't understand. What was the use of the immortality? You have the endowment you received. Here you stand, and the Soma stay exactly where they are. It seems like you practically did nothing to stop the spread of the Somas. Hey, I did all right. It's just he got awkward. I kind of got tired of failing. Kripa grew pensive. Kalki decided to change the subject. You know, sometimes I wonder, what if we are wrong and it's not Kali? What if it's someone else and we are just targeting the wrong guy? Kripa looked uncertain. Padma had learnt enough about the prophecy, Soma's dharm, adharm, endowments, the breaking. She knew exactly what Kalki was talking about, since Kripa had explained to her when they were ascending the hills. Mate, Kali fits the poster of the ultimate bad guy. Kalki furrowed his brows. I sure hope so. Can anyone be a pishach? I mean, if they fight their way up to the ladder. The idea seemed interesting. Yes, unlike other tribes where you are born into a certain role, pishach and apsaras are two tribes which are achieved and not ascribed. Kripa affirmed. They seem quite the same as the Rakshas. Kripa shook his head. Oh, I wish Rakshas are military men, sort of crazy, but they follow a code. They fight for a cause, while the pishach don't. They are just dense maniacs, and one must stay away from them as much as possible, which makes me question, have built your strength throughout our journey? He grinned at Kalki. Kalki snorted. Padma let out a guffaw. Her tension eased a bit. That is when she noticed a pishach entering the tent with the same ragged loins, nail jewelry around his neck, and dirty messy hair. He stomped his feet. I think it's time. Kalki looked at her. Padma looked back at him. At that moment she could see he was afraid for her as well. Wait, I thought he hated me. Just don't get killed, all right? He awkwardly patted her on the shoulder. The gesture made her happy, though she would never admit it to anybody. Padma nodded and avoided his gaze as she walked to the exit and moved towards the net, which was in between two trees. The net was being used as the arena. She realized it was going to be quite tough for her to move fast. She had good footwork when it came to dueling, but that advantage won't be of much use now. She stepped over to the net when she realized her spectators were several pishach. They had climbed over the vines and were hanging from them. Some even hung upside down. They all hooted and howled as Padma rocked the net, desperately trying to control her balance. Anna jumped on the net and cradled her body, straightening her posture. She had a strange weapon, a dagger axe on one end. It was an axe with a jutted blade protruding and glimmering on the other end. It was conical, and a dagger blade was coming out sharp. Brahmaputraksh stood at the other end of the net on a bridge that towered over the two trees a few paces away from the net. Since all of the area was covered with vines, vines, canopies, foliage, marshes, and branches. He spoke in a weird lingo, and everyone went silent, and then he clapped his hands, which made everyone loudly chutter. Padma looked at Kripa and Kalki, who had clenched faces, while Ratna, Maru, and Smrit were quite calm, and then Anna came forward, swishing her axe towards Padma's face. She instantly fell back, her foot getting caught in the space of the net, and her sandals slipped and fell down in the swamp. Padma just realized there was a swamp beneath them, and it was the best way to die in their scent. She be defeated. Anna didn't care. Her moves were swift, and she was calculating the space between the nets as she attacked again, but this time Padma deflected her axe by one dagger, and with another she slashed her knees. At that moment he hooting grew, and Anna fell, and as Padma bought herself time, she tried to pull her foot out of the net, but it was just twisting more into a knot, and she was getting worried. I won't be able to fight like this. Anna, bleeding now, still went for the attack, and Padma tried to roll over, but her foot hindered her from doing so. Anna disarmed her by taking one of her weapons. Taking her dagger, she smashed it hard on Padma's shoulder, almost stabbing her, but Padma stopped her by using her other dagger, and with her free foot she plunged a kick in Anna's abdomen. Anna fell back, groaning in pain. Padma went for the dagger, which was in the corner. Reaching out to it in anger, Anna walked over it calmly and just kicked it away from the net. It fell in the swamp, drowning with a plump. Now that was a coward's move. Anna shrugged. She had some weird ink over her face, and Padma realized it wasn't just any ink. It was a brand given to Apsaras by their owners. Most owners don't do it since it spoils their faces, though some do it to show ownership over their property, and by the looks of it she was quite frustrated from being owned by someone. I know you are an Apsara. Padma tried to distract her. The Pishach hooted in the background. I know someone owned you, and I'm sorry. I don't care if you are sorry. I intend to survive. That's all that matters. I know I have been taught the same thing. Padma was buying time, thinking of ideas. Ever since I was young, ever since I lost my family, I had been taught to kill. Things changed when I met this individual who taught me that there's more than just killing. There's life, and life is greater than anything. And in that brief moment she admitted to herself that she missed Arjun. It doesn't matter what you say, girl, either you live or I do. I'm glad you were liberated from the clutches of a man. Padma came up with a move she could use. That's why I'm sorry for what I'm gonna do. Anna narrowed her gaze in confusion. Padma instantly turned to the farthest corner of the net, grabbed it, and turned the net upside down. Anna slipped from it, collapsing deep in the swamp, while Padma didn't, since her foot was caught in the net, and she hung upside down, but with a grin, though she wasn't able to ignore the wails and cries of Anna as she tried to save herself by swimming in the swamp. Her effort was in vain. As she started drowning, she saw Brahmputraksh grinning as he clapped. The Pishach who were hanging from the vines tied those vines back up and jumped in the swamp, only to pull Anna up. Anna was grateful for her rescue. She spluttered water from her mouth. There was a sense of relief before Anna realized that her clothes were being torn by the Pishach in midair. Her skin was being scratched, and her head was being sucked and eaten by the cannibal. Padma rested her eyes and took some water from the bucket the Pishach had given her. She washed her face in a hurry. She felt responsible for what had just happened. The image of the Pishach eating Anna alive was replaying in her mind. It was a dishonorable way to go, but it turned out to be worse, since the killing was inhumane. In fact, everyone had turned their faces except Ratna, who had watched it intently. She was in the hut again, and her feet ached and her stomach lurched with disgust. I lost my sandals, she spoke to herself, her eyes half closed. You did a smart thing, lass. I feel horrible. Padma shook her head, though she knew why she was feeling horrible. She never looked at her victims after slicing their throats. She didn't have to see the aftermath. She had had to face the consequence of her actions. Well, you should. Kripa shrugged, but at least you live to tell the tale. Brahmputraksh. The next battle would be between Kalki and Ratna Maru, but after witnessing Anna's death, Kalki had turned white. Since he knew what fate awaited the loser, he knelt down, asking Kripa to do the same. Kripa retorted, my knees hurt, I'm old. Don't forget that. Shut up, we need to escape, you don't say. Padma remarked. Kalki clenched his fist. We need a way out, otherwise we can, well, we will keep dancing on their fingers. That's not who we are. All right, Kripa agreed. Padma did too. We have one day to figure it out. I will channel the past avatars to know about it more. My strength, I need to learn how to use my strength better. If I'm the avatar, I should start behaving like one. Padma nodded. Finally, he was embracing his role. Thank God. I will be on the lookout and make sure Ratna doesn't kill you during your sleep. Kripa nudged Kalki, only to see that Ratna was watching them, sitting in the other corner with dozing over her shoulder. Yeah, you do that, Kalki turned to Padma. Now me, I think I will rest a little. She massaged her feet, groaning. Padma could see that Kalki had just frowned at that, but she was hurting and she didn't care if he minded her resting, and yet instead of making a snarky comment or a rude remark, Kalki pulled out his slippers and handed them to her. When Padma didn't take them, he softly slipped them under her feet. Her feet didn't feel anything, but her stomach lurched even more for some reason. Good work. He had a steady face, almost genuine. Thank you, said Padma. She was confused. Why is he being nice all of a sudden? Is it because he thought I was going to die? Well, he better. I'm glad you are alive. All Padma could do was nod. At that moment, Kalki left the corner and sat at the other end of the hut for his channeling session, closing his eyes and letting his core connect to the spiritual plane. Kripa then whispered to her, "Don't worry, lass. I won't tell." What? Padma narrowed her gaze. That you just blushed. At his gesture, Padma widened her eyes as she rubbed her hot cheeks in embarrassment. Arjun had thought that he had come to know how to wrestle after being in the prison for such a long time, but when he saw Harsha strangling someone by just hauling him up the ground and then releasing the dead meat, Arjun knew that he had thought wrong. I'm going to die a horrible, horrible death. Master Reddy had given up hope on Arjun and concentrated on the other wrestlers while Arjun practiced by himself. After the dreadful day with Kali, when he had portrayed Arjun as the mole in the group, everyone eyed him with suspicion. In fact, Rudra hadn't spoken to him as well, which was kind of a disappointment for Arjun. Vikram had eventually come up to him and said, "I know you didn't say anything." "Thank you," Arjun sighed as he strengthened his upper body by trying to stand on his arms. Over the past few months he had gotten quite tough. Vikram had helped him with the sessions, but there is a high chance you would die in the competition. I know it's deliberate. I don't know why Lord Kali hates you so much. I kind of burned down his treasures. Arjun nervously chuckled to himself at the thought. Truth be told, he would have gotten angry if someone would have done the same to him. Vikram awkwardly nodded. Arjun continued with his practice, choosing to go to a separate place where there was a dummy. He began to practice with the dummy stuck to a wooden rod, and he caught it from behind, hit it in the legs, and tried to grab it by the neck when he heard a voice from the back, "That's not how you do it." Arjun turned to see the gleaming body of Rudra standing tall and firm in front of him. Arjun turned away, ignoring him. "If you practice like this, they will skin you alive in the arena. Why do you care?" Arjun mumbled to himself. "What did you just say?" Arjun could feel the anger pulsating from Rudra. He came in front of Arjun and grabbed his hand. "We've been trying to save your ass for so many days. Harsha had planned to take you down at lunchtime, but I have been holding him back." "Really?" "Yeah, really." Arjun looked down, parting his hands from him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I care." He stopped, gulping down his anger. "I know you didn't do it, and that Lord Kali is pitting us against each other. He really hates you." "Yes, thank you for believing in me, but just because I believe in you doesn't mean Harsha will. He has readied himself to challenge you in the competition and break you in front of Lord Kali and become his favorite fighter. Since when does Harsha care about being good in Kali? Everyone wants that, but I can't see you go down in the process. If you train like this, you will be surely killed." Arjun nodded. "What's your plan?" "Let me train you. At least you can fend him off and tire him out. That big fat man has everything but stamina. And even if you have nothing, you can count on your stamina, so it works both ways. You don't care if Harsha dies?" Rudra came forward, standing tall in front of Arjun. He was almost as tall as Kalki, or perhaps taller. "I just don't want you to die." Arjun lowered his eyes, mustering up the courage to ask what he had wanted to ask Rudra for a while. Why are you here in prison?" At this, Rudra's eyes narrowed and his forehead creased. "Well, if you train well and beat me, I shall tell you." Arjun smiled. He was expecting a harsher reply. "Let's go with it then." The training was excruciating, to say the least. They practiced in a corner away from the other prisoners, and seeing Rudra as an active participant, Master Reddy didn't even care to interfere. In a few days, Rudra taught Arjun about the various complications faced by a wrestler and how Arjun must build his core strength. "It's not about the muscles." He patted his arms, flexing his biceps. "I mean, they do look massive, but that's not all. Wrestling is all in here." Rudra pointed to his head. "Mind games. You need to anticipate what your opponent is going to do. Counter them. It's about being quick, be decisive." And when he said it, he moved like a python, grabbing him from the back and locking his head with his arms. Arjun felt breathless for a moment. With this move, you can suffocate your opponent, though not in a life-threatening way. Harsha may be strong, but if he can't breathe, he can't fight. Rudra released Arjun. "Great. What else can I I do to win against a giant like Harsha. I will show you pass between my legs and from the back grab my throat and make sure you choke this little thing here. He pointed at the larynx. Come on, try it. I won't defend myself. Arjun went between his legs and then grabbed him from the back. Okay, now whenever you grab someone's neck, make sure you also grab their forehead or at least their arm so they don't try to get the upper hand on you. And now to play dirty, you can just poke Harsha in the eye. Won't that be a rule breaker?